Hey, Job Board Secrets fans, got another founder interview for you today. I've dialed up Chris Bakke, founder and CEO of Laskie.com, Laskie. It's a new platform that, quote, precisely matches candidates with curated job opportunities. So we'll talk to him about the new platform and get his thoughts on the world of job search. So, Chris, welcome to the show. It's great to speak to you today.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
Where are you guys based, first of all?
So I'm in Danville, California. So that's the East Bay area. I'm only one of two people on our team in California, though. So we're all over the place. We have about 30 people in 6 countries now. So I think 20 people based here in the States. About 10 of those are in Austin. We've got people in Florida, Tennessee, Maine, New York, Pennsylvania. So all spread out. And then we have some teammates in Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, and Philippines.
The new way of working, right? Distributed workforce, all remote.
Exactly. Yep. Mostly time zone aligned. We're pushing the limits with a Philippines team that we're just starting to hire, but yeah, mostly North and South America. So yeah, our last company was fully distributed as well. So we got used to it, I guess, before it was fully popular and necessary over the last 2 years. So yeah, it allows us to tap very, I think, exciting international pools of talent. And then, as far as the US team, I think we have people that really enjoy the flexibility of, living the nomad life or having flexibility to move. So we've already had, I think, 2 people on the team in the last 6 months move within the US. And so it just gives them a lot of comfort and flexibility that we can cover working in, all 50 states plus LATAM.
Gotcha. Okay. So what's the history of Laskie? Tell me, how long has it been around? It's fairly new, but give me give me the origin story, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. So we started in March of this year. So we're only a few months into it now, I guess. So myself and my co-founder, Daniel O'Shea, we started it after we founded our previous company together, which was called Interviewed.com, which was a talent assessment company really focused on high volume, non-technical talent. So you had like HackerRank and Caliber early on, and Carrot, and all these different companies largely focused on interviewing and assessing the skills of software engineers. And then I think really across non-technical, you had all of these, fairly old school legacy, platforms that were doing kind of multiple choice style assessments, fill in the blank style assessments. So we worked with a lot of enterprise customers. This was like 2015, 2016, 2017. It interviewed to build this company. We had customers like IBM and Wells Fargo, all the way down to kind of high growth companies at the time, Uber and Lyft and Airbnb. And then we sold the company to Indeed in 2017. And Daniel, my co-founder, took over SMB engineering teams, and then I took over enterprise product teams. And so yeah, now our product is called Indeed Assessments. So as an employer, if you use any of the video interviewing, any of the assessment questions on Indeed, that was our team that built that. And then, as a candidate, for better or for worse, I guess if you've ever been through a video interview or answered any questions or done an assessment on Indeed, our team built that whole experience on the candidate side as well. So yeah, then we started Laskie, the name.
Let me stop you for a second, Chris. I want to ask about that experience with Indeed. They're sort of the 800-pound gorilla in the space. Mm-hmm. But what was it like selling to them, first of all? What was the experience?
Yeah, it was super positive. I tell many people with very straightforward. They are the best company, other than the ones that I've created that I've ever worked for. So I've also worked at Zillow and other companies in kind of the real estate space. And Indeed, the story there was we were raising our seed round for Interviewed in 2015. And I don't even remember exactly how it happened, but this woman, Christine, who was on the corporate development team at the time, she said, hey, can we, you guys are working in the HR tech space. Indeed was just starting to invest in companies. I think we were the second company that they invested in actually after HackerRank. prior to that year. I think in 2014 they invested in HackerRank. So they, as a company, Indeed was very interested in the talent assessment space and in sort of like talent measurement and ranking and qualification, all this stuff. And they were starting to build some stuff internally. So we were a little hesitant to take their, investment and have them on our cap table, but we agreed and they put in a small check. And then we really kind of just like kept them up to date, on a quarterly basis over 15, 16, 17, what we were building. And then in mid 2017, we were at the point where we were raising our Series A, and Indeed was aware of that, and so they kind of came in and preempted that Series A raise and said, let's just buy you guys. But a little bit before that, they actually became a customer. So we were selling into a number of job boards. We were kind of in process with LinkedIn. We had fully deployed with Upwork, powering a lot of their freelancer assessments. We had partially rolled out in sort of a pilot with Indeed. So I think a big future that we were going to be relying on with Interviewed, our previous company was working with big and small job boards. We had worked with some really small job boards, like there's this company Jit Jat Joe, JJJ, that we worked with, and they were like 4 people at the time, all the way up to like Indeed, Upwork, LinkedIn. And so, if we could integrate with job boards, that was great for us, because it was essentially a partnership where we could get a ton of candidate volume on our assessments. So the acquisition was stressful, but pretty straightforward. And they did a great job with the acquisition. I think a huge percentage of acquisitions, just like a huge percentage of startups, fail. And I think, speaking in real numbers, when we were acquired, we had about 1.5 million candidates per year going through our assessments. Last year, in 2020, we had 200 million candidates go through. So the product, grew by like 150x under Indeed. Raj Mukherjee, who's the head of product there, was kind of the sponsor internally, and he's done a great job. I think integrating the team. When the 3 co-founders of Interviewed, when we left, we were actually the first 3 of that team to leave Indeed after 3 years. So a lot of the team, is still embedded in the team, in the Indeed team 4 years later, which is, I think, always a sign of an acquisition well done. And yeah, I mean, it's a space that I think, seeing what was happening at Indeed definitely inspired a lot of the early days of what we're doing now at Laskie. And we saw just a huge opportunity with small businesses, but I would say also primarily with enterprise businesses, just in terms of like being on the ground, being in meetings with companies that are getting 2 million plus applicants per year from Indeed. On the enterprise side, was pretty wild. And just looking at all the processes and things that these companies have to have in place, from video screens to assessments to automation around like screening resumes, everything that they have to like narrow these pools of 2, 3, 4 million candidates a year that they're getting from a single job board down to like the 20,000 people they ultimately hire.
Very cool. Okay, really interesting stuff there. It's great to have a background in this space, because it does take that expertise in terms of building something the market wants and needs, right? Mm-hmm. But tell me, so I've seen a lot of matching plays in the last, say, 5 years, Chris, just trying to create a better match. But how is your matching different than the matching of an Indeed or a ZipRecruiter today? I mean, tell me more about kind of the granularity of why it's different. Yeah,
we're pretty inspired by, I'd say, like what lies in the middle of your traditional job board space and traditional recruiting. And so this is always something that I've been, I would say, fascinated with over the last 5 or 6 years in the space, which is, really in terms of external solutions, companies, big or small, have 2 ways that they are driving additional qualified candidates or just candidates in general to their jobs. So you've got, this job board model, which is obviously done very well. LinkedIn, Indeed, a number of kind of verticalized and specialized job boards, per industry. And in general, the deal, whether you're kind of amortizing it over a year-long license, or you're paying like LinkedIn, or you're paying per job like Indeed, in general, the gist is, pay somewhere in the range of like, $50 to $500 and we'll send you a bunch of applicants. So at Indeed, we saw, a really small business that nobody's ever heard of who's, underpaying for the market. They might spend $50 on a job and get 10 applicants. For companies that are really aggressive and kind of know what they're doing, let's say like Subway sandwiches, they might spend $100 and get 200 applicants because people know Subway. Companies like Amazon, very frequently at Indeed, were getting 800 plus applicants per job that they were posting, just because name brand recognition, they were paying above market in a lot of cases. And so you have this system of a couple $100 probably for like 100 candidates that you have to go through. Everybody kind of knows the deal. On the other side, really the other option is traditional recruiting, which in 2019, I would call traditional recruiting or staffing a model where in general, you were paying somewhere in the range of 15 to 20% of first year salary. In our market, which is specialized tech talent and executive search, we're seeing companies pay 30 to 40% of first year salary. So, and that's obviously for a very curated list of candidates. There's not a ton in the middle there. And so this is one of the things, I obsess over, which is in this, like, depending on who you ask, 110 to $200 billion in spend that includes, outside recruiting, staffing, and job boards. You really have this model of like, pay $200 and get 200 applicants, and then you do the work to find the right one, or pay $20,000 or $30,000 to a recruiter who then gives you ideally a much shorter list of kind of curated talent. So in terms of the matchmaking, I think most platforms that try to get really good at matchmaking, they rely very heavily on these like asynchronous assessments, which, although interestingly, like that's our background, that's not what we're super focused on. We're really trying to like marry and combine this idea of using people very heavily in the process. So one of the reasons we're 9 months old and a team of 30 is very few of those people are actually software engineers. So we have 15 talent partners on our team, and we look at this model of a lot more similar to, I would say, a traditional like Hollywood talent agency than we do a traditional job board. So the idea is we have people who build relationships, have actual conversations with 100% of the talent that we match. So unlike other job boards that are focused on matchmaking, where the goal is, spend on Facebook ads, spend on LinkedIn ads, spend on Google ads, try to drive candidate traffic into the system, and then have those candidates fill out as much information asynchronously as possible. Because we're focused on a very kind of senior group of talent kind of in the tech industry, we kick off everything with a 30-minute phone call. And so we're obviously collecting a ton of information, but all of that right now is done manually. And I would expect that we actually continue to do that manually at scale. And one of the challenges of the job board space is always like, how do you get that level of curation? This is something that Indeed struggles with. It's something that LinkedIn struggles with. Dice, Monster, like go down the list. I think almost every company is struggling with like, how do we not send spam or incorrect candidates to a company? And so as a talent partner or recruiter on our team learns about a company and a candidate, we're able to make like very precise matches because we just use a lot of like human knowledge on top of our platform to do that. And then the sort of leverage that you get, which is the question of I think a lot of job boards is how do we stop spam? And the question with a lot of recruiting firms is how do we ever make this scale? And so the spam is ultimately stopped by having a large team of humans that will grow to probably 100 plus people over the next year in the middle. The scale piece I think is really interesting, which is we're doing what I think Hired did very well early on. Vettery, after their first couple of years, did very well early on, which is that we focus on a very small number of roles, and then we try to get employers who are hiring in very similar pay bands, almost always remote, and we stack these roles on top of each other. So that when one of our talent partners or a recruiter on our team speaks to a senior software engineer who's looking for a remote role that pays $200,000 a year, like on our platform today, we may have 60 or 70 options to match that software engineer with. And so the advantage of like the matchmaking piece is we can afford to invest a lot in hiring people kind of in the machine who are speaking to talent and qualifying them and answering questions and kind of walking them through the process. Because then on average, like once we get somebody in the process, that talent accepts about 80% of matches that we send them. And so the idea is like, once we qualify a person, we want to get to the point where we're at like nearly 100% likelihood that they actually find their job through Laskie, because we have sort of like enough jobs to, you know, keep recommending them and kind of sending them down that path.
Candidates, like how are you driving them to the platform itself? I mean, job search activity is, you know, every job board is struggling today with getting more candidates into their system. But tell me more about how you're doing that, what the plan is, you know, going forward here. And
Yeah,
it's just focused on tech, is that correct?
Yeah. So almost all focused on tech. So we focus on senior product, senior engineering, senior design roles, and then also executive search. So we've done head of growth, head of marketing, head of people, head of ops, head of engineering, head of product. And so that is the plan today. I would say that we will probably not move too far outside of that plan, other than probably onboarding some senior like IC growth roles in 2022. So yeah, in terms of candidate acquisition, this is obviously the hard part right now. There's always these swings in the industry. In 2015, when we were doing Interviewed, finding companies that were aggressively hiring seemed to be the hardest thing in the world, and millions of candidates wanted to be on our platform. And now I think we've got millions of companies that want to be on our platform and 10 candidates, right? And so
the job search world.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it'll continue to change. We won't have this problem forever. We might have it a lot longer in tech. So the three primary ways that we do this today, if you back up and you look at people that have done similar models before, where you have a large number of people kind of like in the machine working with talent, again, the two classic examples, especially in the tech world, that come to mind are Hired.com and Vettery. The ways that both Hired and Vettery drove candidates in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017 was ad spend. So they were, you know, running ads on Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, and they were saying, hey, if you're a software developer, we can match you to multiple companies. I think that still works today. It's gotten a lot more expensive, but we don't do any of that. We spend $0 on kind of paid advertising. So the three things that we do, one is we have a team of sourcers. So a lot of our, like, 6 of our 30 people right now are full-time sourcers. And then we work with a team of, what is it now? Probably 6 or 8 people that are contractors part-time. So call it like 10 full-time people roughly that sit in market. So across the US, LATAM, and the Philippines, who are sourcing very specific profiles for us. So that may be Java engineers with over 7 years of experience that are in Argentina. It could be a senior DevOps manager who lives in, you know, the United States, who has over 10 years of experience. So kind of paid direct sourcing is one thing. And I think our message resonates really well, because unlike traditional recruiting sourcing, where a recruiter is sourcing like what we call linearly, and we are sourcing exponentially. So a recruiter is sourcing linearly because in general, a recruiter who's reaching out to you on LinkedIn has one job, maybe best case scenario, like 3 or 5 jobs, you know, in their pocket that they can match you to. And so usually you're getting messages all day on LinkedIn as an engineer saying, hey, do you want to work at, you know, Raytheon? We're hiring software engineers. And it's like, no, I don't really want to work at Raytheon. So I ignore that message. If we're hitting up that same engineer and we say, hey, do you want to speak with one of our talent partners who then can qualify you, and we can match you with up to 100 jobs that pay over $200,000 a year? That seems to be a lot more attractive because they can pick and choose who they want to interview with, which is important right now. So I think our sourcing is definitely our number one channel. Our second channel is partnerships. So we've developed in the last 9 months since sort of starting, it's a pretty curated list. We've actually brought the number down. I like to say it's this like growing network, which I think it'll grow again in 2022. We originally started with 24 partners who were sending us candidates that they weren't hiring internally. And I think this market is super exciting. It's been looked at from a million different angles, and it feels like still today, almost nobody has figured this out, which is partnering with boutique recruiting firms, partnering with other platforms and saying, if you've already done all the work to vet a candidate, you've already, you have some sunk cost here. There's no doubt about it. Whether you vet them with assessments or a person or a video interview, you have these people that for whatever reason are great. There's a job out there for everyone, but they didn't get a job with your recruiting firm. They didn't get a job on your platform. So we have, it was 24, now it's about 12 active partners that are sending us candidates that made it through their process, like kind of got the green flag, but didn't get matched for whatever reason. We're very bullish on this long term. I think that this is an idea that we're really doubling down on. In January, we're making a push to get this number from 12 to 100. And so the idea is we'll have hundreds at scale by the end of next year of staff augmentation firms, other platforms, boutique recruiters, and also we're playing around with recruiters inside of large companies today where we have the company's permission to sort of do a talent share. So if you look at like a large tech company who's getting, maybe inbound even 20,000 software engineers, they're only hiring, 800 people a year. There's probably a couple hundred there that met their bar, but for whatever reason, culture fit, timing, location, just didn't get hired. And so we're getting kind of company level sign off to ingest those candidates for free and then send that company, free matches in exchange. And then the third thing is referrals. So we pay really aggressive referral fees. So one of the advantages of being, I would say, less like a job board, more like a recruiting firm that scales, is on average, we take 12 to 15% of a candidate's first year salary when they get hired through us. So we're primarily working jobs that pay over $200,000 a year. So you can imagine if we make $20,000 or $30,000 right now, we are able to pay about 50% of that fee to a referral partner that sends us a candidate that gets hired. And so we really believe long-term in sort of like democratizing this idea of sourcing and recruiting. Everybody knows people. Everybody knows people who are looking for a job. And today, other than like pretty lame, bonuses that you see on social media, oh, we're paying $100 referral fee or $1,000 or $2,000 referral fee to send us a high quality engineer. Like, why would you want to do that if Laskie will pay you $15,000 to send a qualified engineer? So we're sort of taking the model of taking more traditional recruiting fees and then spending upwards of 50% of that back to a referral partner who will send us qualified talent. So that's sort of how we've driven like the first 10,000 plus candidates, those three methods kind of onto Laskie.
Gotcha. I want to ask about sourcing. So what are your sources telling you about the responses they're getting from, tech engineering talent like that? They've been notoriously hard people to kind of get a hold of and just, you get them on the phone, but do you have any insights there?
Yeah, I think again, like we're constantly, we definitely treat sourcing like an A/B test experiment. So we're constantly playing around with messaging. In general, our messaging that we can match you to X number of companies that pay, Y to Z works really well. I think that that's probably one of the top, messages that converts. We see specific campaigns to software engineers that convert close to 20% from outbound message to initial call with a talent partner. I believe really strongly that, I wouldn't say that there's a lot of companies doing this, but from a platform perspective, one of the things that also really works is that we do a call. Like, I think that this is always a debate, especially with let's say engineering talent who might be perceived as like more introverted. Like, do they want to do a call? We've looked at this in a lot of ways, and I would say our opinion is constantly morphing and changing here. But if we give software engineers the ability to do an initial asynchronous assessment or like just fill out your profile and get started versus do a call with a talent partner, 80% of people choose the call over just like set up your profile. So I do think from a sourcing perspective, the world has I think we're like trying to over automate this problem. Like, not everybody wants to run their entire job search end to end without ever speaking to somebody. And so as companies are like using these like mass high volume hiring fairs, and they're using like asynchronous assessments and asynchronous, video interviews, and they're using text and they're using chat, like all of these are good tools. And I think for 20 or 30 or maybe even 50% of people, like maybe they're even the preferred way of finding a job. But we're really leaning on the fact that like somebody then wants to speak to that recruiter or speak to that sourcer and like get all their questions answered before they proceed. And so again, I do think like that's really the secret sauce, is like from a, the ability to offer really high quality jobs and multiple matches for doing a single call. And then I think long term, our goal is to actually like replace an initial screening call with most of our clients by kind of doing that in-house. And so the advantage is it almost becomes like this, standardized, college application where like you do it once and you kind of can then submit to 200 plus colleges. Do this initial 30 or 60-minute screening call with Laskie, and like we have gotten Reddit, Instacart, Flexport, Stripe, all of our hiring partners to agree to like waive the first 30-minute screen because they start to trust the quality of Laskie candidates.
Very cool. I'm on your site now. What's this marketplace you got going on here? It says looks like kind of gig work almost. What's that about?
Yeah, so we actually started with the marketplace. That was the very first thing that we launched. I think again, we kind of got started on this and probably put that out into the world in May. The marketplace has been an amazing way to I would say like attract really high quality designers, product people, growth experts, engineers onto the platform who aren't fully ready to commit. So in our launch post, which is linked, at the top of the page, Laskie.com, you go all the way to the header up there in our launch post. You'll notice that we focus across full-time work, part-time contracts, and then also freelance. So this is something that, I will call it kind of an ongoing test. 80% of our placements today are full-time, kind of FTE employment. About 10% are like anywhere from like part-time to full-time contractors, and then about 10% is kind of marketplace gig work. And so this has been a great example, I think, about like adapting and growing with companies. So my co-founder and I, like we saw this at Indeed. Like obviously most of our recruiting efforts at Indeed, even internally, were focused on getting full-time employees in the door. That said, we were spending a ton of money on Upworkers, on Salesforce consultants, on experts to help like build a P&L for a client. Like there were all sorts of freelancers moving in and out of our company across different platforms. And I think if we can offer a single platform that kind of looks at work with a lot more flexibility, and we say we're not just focused, like not all software engineers want to find a new job. There's some software engineers, there's some marketers, there's some designers that say, I'm happy in my full-time job. I like the diversity of experience that I can get with Laskie by finding an extra 5 or 10 hours a week on a project basis or an hourly basis of like doing something that like stimulates my mind or uses a part of my skill set that I'm not otherwise using in my full-time job. And then I think long term we do see that as a hook, right? We've already seen actually like one of the first full-time placements we made was because we had this kind of gig work marketplace. And one of our like mid-sized customers had 3 engineers, one from Amazon, one from Facebook, and one from Intel that they were hiring through Laskie. And they actually ended up hiring the Amazon engineer full-time onto their team. So it sort of allowed like the engineer to work with the company and the company to work with the engineer, that it was almost like a paid project, right? Where they said like, oh, this is a cool company. This is a cool engineer. We want to work together more long-term. And so whether it's like augmenting your existing work and helping you make more money on the side, or if it's a path to say like, do a couple of projects with companies. And then, if one of those projects turns out great and you want to move into a full-time role, we can also likely help you facilitate that.
Yeah, I like that approach because as a freelancer myself, I've always been more attracted to, part-time stuff. I'm surprised like more companies don't do like more job shares inside of their organizations, take advantage of that person who's out there. Cause there's a lot of those people out there who do want that flexibility and want to break up their day with different projects, different tasks, different companies.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great way to test the waters if you're looking for a longer term contract or again a full-time role. But I would say for some people, I'd say particularly on the engineering, design, and product side, it's just been a great way to like knock out an extra $1,000, $5,000 per month in kind of predictable income, which is great. And we definitely have plans next year to sort of grow that side of the business.
Nice. Last question, just take us through the pricing in terms of the full-time employee. What does it cost to hire somebody through Laskie?
Yep. So we're always playing around with the model here. If you go onto our site and then click, I think it's for companies, about halfway down the page, you'll see our active pricing there. And so in general, what we've done is to bootstrap liquidity of the types of what we call talent profiles that we're actually offering in the marketplace. If you are looking for a curated list of candidates and we don't have that talent profile, we charge $3,900 per month plus 12% of first year salary. So it sort of covers a lot of our initial like bootstrapping, sourcing, vetting costs. But then you get, like, often on a one-off basis, a company gets sort of that initial list of candidates all to themselves. Once we then do that a couple of times, we'll sort of move that to a talent profile on our marketplace, where then we assign a dedicated full-time sourcer and talent partner and account manager actually to that profile, who's then making sure that on a monthly basis, the average talent profile has like hundreds of new people moving through it. We're meeting all of them, we're vetting all of them, we're sending, we're answering follow-up questions that they have in their interviews. And so that, when you're hiring, depending on where in the world you're hiring. So if you're in LATAM right now, it's about 15 to 18% first year salary. And then in the US, it tends to be about 17 to 20% of first year salary for those. It is something that we are looking to actually drive that cost down over time. And so as we have built out the initial team, we've started to get scale there. It makes a lot more sense, I think, to move that rate closer to 10 to 15% for most roles. So I think hopefully by like the middle of 2022, our kind of standard model will be taking about 12% of a candidate's first year salary. We love the precision and I would say attention to detail and white glove service you get from a recruiter. But the long-term idea, again, is to move that pricing down significantly from where traditional recruiting is today, and find some happy medium that we think exists, between what a job board spent, charging you and what a recruiter is charging you.
Well, I think 2022 is going to be a busy year for anybody in the job space. So, Chris, good luck with the team and the product, and we'll be watching. So,
yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah. That was fun.
You can learn more at Laskie.com. It's Laskie.com. What's behind the name, by the way?
Laskie is a small street in San Francisco, and it's where our previous company's headquarters was based. So there's Twitter and Stripe and Uber and all these companies right at 10th and Market Street, and we were across the street from them. And then right behind that was a little alleyway called Laskie, and that's like how you would get into our building. So we named the company after that, and then our logo is a pigeon because the alleyway was always filled with like an unreasonable number of pigeons. And so we set that up in, I don't know, March when we started, and we haven't looked back.
Awesome. Well, again, Chris, good luck, and thanks for joining us today.
All right, thank you.